So this session today, we're going to talk about the Pilates breath. And I want to chat a little bit about what I call our core cylinder. So when I talk about the core cylinder, we're thinking about the diaphragm at the top of the cylinder, the pelvic floor at the bottom of the cylinder, and then the muscles, the core muscles or the abdominal muscles wrapping around to form the walls of a cylinder. So if you think about a can or a cylinder, tin of tomatoes, whatever, it's got the top and the bottom and then the wrapping around. So if we just think about that for a moment, we've got the diaphragm that's moving up and down rhythmically, constantly, all day, all night long, because that's what's driving our breath. So as we breathe in, our lungs need to fill up, so our diaphragm's going down, and then as we breathe out, we want to expel that air, so our diaphragm's coming back up. And breathing is so amazing. It just happens all the time without us even thinking about it, but we also have conscious control over it. So there's not many things in our body that work like that. And we just need to make sure that we're really tuning into our breath all the time, making sure that we're not breathing really rapid and breathing shallow using these upper muscles. We want to make sure that our breath is getting down, so really feeling it down in the base of the lungs and even into the tummy. So we'll talk a little bit more about what a good breath pattern looks like. And I've also linked to a full breathing retraining course that you can do as well. But just while we're talking about our cylinder, we'll come back to that. So the diaphragm is just going up and down rhythmically all the time. The core muscles are working background control just to hold everything in place and to keep us upright. And then they also work harder, of course, when we're moving, especially when we're lifting and doing things like that. So we really want to get those core muscles working as well. And then on the bottom, and often forgotten about, is our pelvic floor. So our pelvic floor is really interesting. It's kind of like 70% of the pelvic floor's action is just background, holding everything up and in. And then the other 30% is that extra oomph that we get, that we need if we're coughing or sneezing or laughing or jumping or those sorts of things, to hopefully stop ourselves from wetting our pants. Now, it's something that should be talked about more, because actually 1 in 3 women who have had a baby have issues, some sort of incontinence issues. And it might just be that when they jump or laugh, there's a little bit of a leak into their undies. So we need to talk about it and we need to work on it, and there's lots that can be done. And we want to integrate these exercises into your Pilates program so that it becomes really functional and really useful. So if we go back to our breath, we're going to work down through those muscles again. With our breathing pattern, we want to look for like a bibasal breathing pattern. So if you get your hands and then pop them right down on the base of your lungs, making sure those shoulders aren't hunched up, so keeping those shoulders down and back, and taking a nice big deep breath in, we should see that these hands are getting pushed out kind of in a lateral or an outward direction with our breath in. And then as we breathe out, they should come back in. We shouldn't see that as we breathe in that nothing's happening with our hands, and instead our shoulders are moving up and down. So that's the first one. We want to make sure our breath is happening down in the right area. Another thing that you could test when you breathe in, so taking another nice big deep breath in, is that you're getting a little bit of extension through your belly. So it's a diaphragmatic breath that we're looking for. So as the breath comes in and our diaphragm pushes down, we should feel our belly pressing out a little bit. And that's completely, perfectly normal to have that little bit of movement through the tummy. So with our breath, we're trying to breathe in and out through our nose all of the time, all day, all night, and during exercise, including during Pilates. So we are trying to keep that breath through the nose. The air gets more filtered as we're going through, it gets humidified, it gets nitrous oxide released, which dilates our vessels, which allows that oxygen to get absorbed better into our system, and we want that oxygen going to our muscles to keep us going throughout our class. So trying as best as you can, unless your instructor cues you otherwise. Sometimes we might want to do deep exhalations through the mouth for different purposes, but as a general rule, we're breathing in and out through the nose, nice, slow, quiet, normal, rhythmic breath, and we're trying to get that breath down into the base of the lungs, not breathing up here in the neck and the shoulders. So that's the breath pattern that we're looking for with Pilates. And as you probably already know, all of our movements in Pilates are coordinated with the breath. So just using one of our basic exercises, our leg press as an example. So we've scanned our body, we know we're in a really good position, we're ready to go. We're going to have our pelvic floor and tummy turned on, which we'll get to in a moment, and then we're going to breathe out as we press out, breathe in as we come back. So it really helps to control the pace of the exercise because you're using the pace of your breath. And that'll stop you from going too slow or too fast, and it'll just be nice and rhythmic and smooth. So that's what we're looking for. Now with the tummy, with the core, we want to pre-activate those muscles before we do our movements in Pilates. So what that looks like is, and the pelvic floor and the tummy do work really nicely together, so I'll teach them separately and then we'll talk about how we can pull them together. But if you think about where your waistband would go, or the top of the hips, the area between the hips, it's like we're trying to tighten that area. So like we're trying to pull those hip bones towards the belly button and draw them back towards the spine. Some people think of it as if your button's a little bit too tight and you're just gently pulling that belly towards the spine so you can get the button done up. However, sometimes when we cue that, people go and tense everything, and that's not exactly what we want. We want it to be more subtle than that. So it's just thinking about that, drawing the hip bones together, gently drawing the belly button towards the spine. So it's just like a little bit of background control. Doesn't have to be 100% effort, 30% effort's perfect for those deep core muscles. Then we want to think about our pelvic floor. So remember, our pelvic floor should be working for us all the time, 70% of it just holding everything up and in. Think about all the organs, all the weight, if that's pushing down as we're walking and going about our day. Our pelvic floor's job is to hold, one of the pelvic floor's job is to hold everything up. So that's what we're going to work on with Pilates, that drawing up and in. So if you think about, imagine you're trying to stop yourself from going to the toilet or trying to stop yourself from passing wind, it's that kind of action. So it's like an internal sucking up and in, and you should not be able to see it from the outside. So I often teach pelvic floor exercises to my clients, and I will say, I will just look back, stand back, they'll be lying on the bed, I'll say, where you go and do your pelvic floor exercise, and I will see something. And what I often see is the bottom muscles are squeezing, the back is flattening, so really imprinting the spine, the tension coming up here, or the breath is getting held. So they're the common mistakes we make with pelvic floor. So it should be a very internal feeling, like a tightening and like a drawing up and in. Now those pelvic floor and tummy muscles work really nicely together. So you can draw the pelvic floor up and in and then pull the tummy muscles at the same time. And that's what we call the T. So if we're thinking about the top of the T being the core and then this part of the T being the pelvic floor, if you hear your instructor say, turn on your T-zone or something like that, that's what they're talking about. And again, 30% effort. Doesn't have to be 100%, everything's working. It should be very internal. It's very much a stability kind of exercise. Low load, high levels of holding, so long holds. So now, what we've got to think about before we start our exercise, we're lying down or sitting, whatever position we're in, we're doing our body scans, we're in our beautiful posture, we've got our breath going in and out nicely through our nose, we're working down in the base of our lungs, we've got our T-zone turned on, we're in our nice neutral spine or whatever spine position we're aiming for, and then we're good to go for our exercise. So it is really worth kind of practicing those things at home, even if it's just lying on the mat with your knees bent, your feet down on the floor, and just turning on all those muscles and practicing turning on your pelvic floor and your tummy and coordinating that with the breath, and then maybe just lifting your leg up and down. So it could be something like this that you might practice. So imagine I'm lying on the floor at home and my knees are just bent like this. I'm going to get my breath going, really focused on getting my breath in the right position. I've got my nice neutral spine, I've turned on my T-zone, and then I might start just doing like a leg lower or something like that. Or I might put both of them up and do little cycling of the legs. And then just working on keeping everything turned on and that background control while the legs and arms are moving. And this is why Pilates is so awesome, because we're working our posture muscles, we're working our core, we're strengthening all of that cylinder that we were talking about in the beginning, diaphragm, core and pelvic floor, whilst at the same time we're strengthening our arms and legs and getting really functional movements. So of course I think it's amazing, especially if you get it right. So that's what I really want you to think about with this. So thinking about the breath, should be in and out through the nose, silent breathing. It should be happening down here, not up here, not too fast, not too slow. We should be coordinating our movements with the breath, and we should have this background control turned on the whole class if you can. You'll keep forgetting and you'll come back to it as you're doing your body scan, but keep thinking about drawing that pelvic floor up and in and tightening those muscles, and you'll have that core cylinder working. And with this strength through here, that's like the solid foundation. So if you talk about the analogy of building a house on a sandy foundation, if you're weak through here, that's your sandy foundation. So if we can get this working, then all your other arms and legs and all the other stuff that you're trying to do just functionally throughout your life will be so much more efficient, stronger, better and easier, and again, much less likely to injure. And of course, if we've got a nice strong core, it's amazing for our lower backs as well.